It's the Week 3 edition of the East County Prep Football Report. I'm Ramon Scott, joined by Dave Dickens of EastCountySports.com. Dave, welcome back to the top 10, to the Grossmont Hills League. Dave, at the beginning of the season, our teams were nowhere to be found in the county's preseason canvas of coaches throughout the county, but as of last week, after last week, the Grossmont Hills League now has 3 teams thrust into the top 10 media rankings following consecutive victories to open the season, including impressive Week 2 wins. Helix, Granite Hills, and Grossmont, Dave, were ranked 6th, 7th, and 8th, respectively, in this week's voting for Grossmont. It was a huge jump. That big win over El Camino thrust them right into the top 10 this week. Big moves by the East County teams last week.
Yeah, and I got to participate in the beginning surge of the Eagles, which, as predicted, would be pretty much taken care of in the first quarter, which was predicted also to be at least 21-0 after a quarter of play. Ended up missing an extra point, so 20. So within a point, I pretty much thought they'd get it together pretty quickly. We were pretty sure, too, that the Norsemen would come out to, give it a great effort, valiant effort. But at the end of the day, even the 2s and 3s, Granite Hills is quite stacked as far as their team as a whole.
Dave, I'll ask you about that because as impressive as the Eagles' victory over the Norsemen was, we know it was basically the largest margin of victory, the largest shutout victory in Granite Hills history, but the pollsters weren't necessarily impressed. We know Granite Hills right now is the defending champion of the Grossmont Hills League, and if you look at those computer rankings, Granite Hills is on top of those 3 teams that we just mentioned, although they're very, very close. Grossmont, Granite Hills, Helix, and Grossmont in that order. They're in that order in the computer rankings. They're separated by just a couple of ratings points. But for the media, they already have Helix ahead of Granite Hills. What say you?
Well, look at it this way. Valhalla, they're probably looking at the strength of schedule. They're looking at where was Valhalla last year and in which direction are they going. We got a great, fantastic coach over there, Charles Bussey. However, I think he's got his work cut out for him, as we saw in this last week. I thought that would be, if they could make it competitive, that would be the edge to start the rebuilding process at this point in time. But as we saw, Granite Hills really got off to an amazing start. We got a kickoff. The second kickoff was fumbled, and they really couldn't get on track. Here's what it is. It's not even so much the Norsemen. It was that the Eagles' surging defensive line is just phenomenal with Burton and Tanner coming off of those edges. And they didn't even get a chance to really test the secondary because they had their whole offensive line was collapsing just about every play.
Well, nonetheless, Dave, I think the respect is back when it comes to Grossmont Conference football right now. You look at El Capitan, they even received votes from a couple of people considering them a top 10 team. So that says volumes too. And you know what, Christian Patriots, they might not be too far behind in joining the ranks of those. Now, unfortunately, Dave, this week, that blockbuster matchup between 2 of the county's top 10 teams, Helix and Mater Dei Catholic, has been shelved due to the COVID protocols. Both teams are going to be 2-0. They're ranked 5th and 6th, respectively. There's a series of games coming up, some of them involving Helix, Cathedral, where all those top teams are going to be meeting, but this one's going to be canceled. And also Mount McGill, who their game was canceled, remember, last week. We didn't talk about it on the show, but they scrambled and got a game together with Sweetwater High this week, but it turns out they don't have the personnel to staff the game. So it wasn't because of the COVID protocols, even though they were playing a Sweetwater Union team in Sweetwater, but everybody was already planning that was a bye week. So it didn't look like, I guess there's a sliver of a chance they could get enough people, and maybe, hopefully, we'd love to see another football game, but that game looks like it's been shelved as well. But losing that Helix Mater Dei game, that was tough this week. I really wanted to see that one shake it out, especially with the way our teams are ranked right now.
No, that's an absolute fact. And we're also, while we're talking about teams that are going to be on the shelf for this week, not due to COVID protocols, but just an early bye, we have Mountain Empire on the shelf this week too. After they came out of the gate just firing on all cylinders and took the lead almost right into the into the half, and we're playing shutout football for the most part. And as Coach Ricky Prince put it, they just ran out of gas.
Well, it sounded like it was a great game against Holtville. Again, Mountain Empire definitely staying within every opponent, even when they're underdogs. They did a great job again. Their time's going to come this season, I think, and we're going to talk about them in the weeks to come. We definitely wanted to hit on them and acknowledge that game, because that was a big game. Holtville coming in and barely getting that one from the Redhawks.
Well, you got to remember, and I think the big standout on that too is on both sides of the ball. Larry Clark is averaging about 112 yards in the two games that they've played, and what is he averaging right now? Something crazy like 16 tackles per game in two games. So that's pretty impressive as far as, kind of reminds us of Cam a couple of years back for the Redhawks. So, but Coach Van is looking forward to taking that time off and regrouping to get ready to head to the coast from the desert next week against Mission Bay.
Well, we're going to talk about Mission Bay a little bit later on in this show. So, and we'll also take a trip out to Vincent Memorial with the Braves. So let's get into it, Dave. Well, we got some good matchups still. Okay, how about that? Maybe we can just leave it at that, right? I mean, as disappointing as it was, everybody wanted to see that Helix Mater Dei, and we're not going to talk about losing these couple of games. Unfortunately, it's some of our teams that have lost these games, and we didn't think that would be the case. So, but Dave, let's get into talking about the Grossmont Foothillers. Why not? They are the biggest mover in the entire county this week. Speaking of big moves, right? Grossmont, Dave, hasn't traveled out of the San Diego section since 1996. They went up to Bellflower and took on powerful St. John Bosco, losing 30-6. And the time before that, Grossmont traveled to the Los Angeles area was in 1957. So Grossmont just doesn't travel out of the section, but if they were ever going to do it, let's do it now. This team is on a roll. They are meeting the Warren Bears out of Downey this week. The Bears are ranked 21st in the southern section. Dave, before I get into your analysis, I just want to acknowledge Grossmont head coach Chris Holmes. He was nominated for the Chargers High School Coach of the Week award for that upset of the Wildcats.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. There was a slim possibility, and we were hoping for great things. And I think Coach Holmes has really warmed himself up in that spot. Captain of that ship, and they're only heading north. And like you said, they'll be heading into the Orange County-ish area. Which you are correct. I haven't seen them out of town in many, many, many years. But let's acknowledge the hurler Trenton Giles last week really put on an aerial assault of the Wildcats secondary.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And how about electrifying playmaker Gio Burns, right? We've seen him now on special teams. We know he can go up and get it on offense. He was great. And we know that Ryan Roddick also gives them a potent chance to stay in there with the Bears. The Bears are going to be favored in this game, Dave, no doubt about it. A ranked team in the southern section. Grossmont never makes this type of trip. Right now, Grossmont just looking great, right? 100 years. We talk about 101 years of Grossmont football, Dave, but this is exciting and new to be right now considered. Look, with all due respect to Steel Canyon, Grossmont and Steel Canyon have switched spots basically right now in the Hills League to join probably co-favorites, right? Granite Hills and Helix. You look at the rankings, you look at the ratings. Grossmont right there, going to be a big factor in this race. Got to tell you though, Dave, the Bears have outscored their first two opponents 105-7. They beat Lucerna last week 52-7. That's Lucerna. They didn't have some patsy. They beat Lucerna 52-7. Their quarterback Nico Ayamaleva has passed for 12 touchdowns in 2 games, just a little bit better than our Trenton Giles. So Grossmont defense going to be really working hard. Ryan Odom, Brennan Sanders, and the guys. Dave, tough game. I'm probably going to be going with the Bears.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big step up for Chris Holmes and his secondary. I think that they're going to really give him a heck of a ride. But I think if Grossmont's able to contain, I think that they'll remain in the game. And I would not be surprised after showing what they showed against the Wildcats just this last week. I think that they could stay in the game. Hopefully, we haven't seen them, but from what you're telling me right now, I think that Grossmont has their hands full, and I'm going to say also the Bears by a couple.
Now, Dave, I want to give you credit. Last week, you picked the Grossmont Foothillers to beat the El Camino Wildcats. I said, I challenge you, Grossmont, keep this game within 2 touchdowns. Well, they completely turned it around, right, on their margin of victory against the Wildcats, looking extremely impressive in the game. So I'm just going to kind of stay with my same prediction as last week. Like to see Grossmont just keep this one within 2 touchdowns. And if they get another great stunner like they did last week, that will easily top that accomplishment and be one of the most notable wins in program history if they go in. And it'll set the county on fire if they go up and win this one. So hopefully we can get some great news out of that game this week, Dave.
Well, I would definitely shoot them through the rankings, and considering the opponent for the Eagles and with Helix in neutral, I think that that's going to definitely probably put them up at the top. However, we'll see how Granite Hills favors, and that's going to be a big one as well.
Yes, indeed, Dave. Granite Hills is going to be taking on Madison, so we could already start to compare some of the teams that are facing teams from the Grossmont Hills League, right? We know that Granite Hills and Steel Canyon have had a great series right now, but it looks like Steel Canyon has to get it together a little bit to get back up to the group that we've talked about in the Grossmont Hills League. Last week, Madison went in. They were trailing. Let's face it, Steel Canyon was winning the game 21-7, and Madison got a 31-yard touchdown, a 51-yard touchdown. Steel Canyon does not give up long touchdowns. Madison came back and stunned the Cougars on their home field in that game last week. So that did set the Cougars back ratings-wise and in the opinion of the public perception going into that game. So for Granite Hills, they're going to be taking on Madison team who came in and won that game with those 2 big plays. But Granite Hills, we know that defense right now is just really. They held Poway, to 10 points in that home opener, right? How's Madison going to get more than a touchdown or 2?
Yeah, I think that Madison's going to definitely have their hands full. And as I mentioned before, coming off the edge, as you mentioned even the week before that, and seeing them in action twice against Poway and against Valhalla, shutting Valhalla out, and as you mentioned, also holding Poway to 10 points. 2 games in, 10 points. I say your defense is pretty much a shutdown as a whole. And I know that Madison has a heck of a hurler behind center, and he's going to have his hands full though, because it doesn't stop at the edges. It also continues into the secondary.
Yeah, the Eagles are clicking right now with Joaquin Thomas Jr. You mentioned the 90-yard kick return. He also had another touchdown in that game against the Norsemen. You talk about the electrifying players right now in the Grossmont Conference, and Joaquin Thomas definitely is in that group, Dave. You might remember, Dave, incredible game that the Eagles had just back in the last full season, back in 2019. Both teams, Madison and Granite Hills, were in the top 15 at that time, but Madison won the game against Granite Hills 39-29. The Warhawks were ahead 32-9, and McComb threw 3 straight touchdown passes in about 12 minutes. The Eagles got to within 7 points. I will mention Jaquale Hodges, who is on the team this year. He did catch 3 passes in that game for 38 yards, and it was kind of the same situation. But Madison was coming off of a 5-point loss to Steel Canyon, came in and maybe they got, the teams were relatively even at that time. I think one was 13th and one was 15th. So the Eagles are going to be expected to win this game. I've got them by at least a touchdown.
Well, and you mentioned Hodges, and talking with Coach Cobbs last week. Hodges was about 2 weeks out. So I didn't get any info regarding him, but if not this week, he'll definitely be back the following week. So, and not to mention, Coach Cobbs said that he's just wants to start early and start heading downhill real quick, and meaning he wants to get that running game and he wants to pound it real quick and open up that passing game, which Nico has been on fire as well.
Dave, are you willing to say anything about the Grossmont Hills League race at this point with Granite Hills and Helix and Grossmont? I just want to see this shake out a few more weeks.
I think it's anybody's trophy at this point in time.
Can Steel Canyon get back in this race?
Absolutely. I think it's an overlooked, but finally getting into the limelight, and overwhelmingly overdue.
Yeah.
And I definitely, though, on this one, I'm going to go with Granite Hills for sure. This is also, and I know we've touched on it before, this is going to be the third of 5 home games in a row. So
okay.
Eagles definitely enjoy their home crowd. That's, as you know, always filled on the home side. And I'm going to look for Granite Hills with a pair.
Yeah, and you figure Madison coming into the East County for the second straight week. Look, I agree with you. The Cougars, look, I say, are they still in the race? Everybody's 0-0, right? The Hills League is 3 weeks, the last 3 weeks of the season. But I'm just saying that right now the Cougars are showing that they're a little behind those 3 teams. But still, Madison had to go in against a familiar foe. They played Steel Canyon many a times, went in there, got the clutch victory, come from behind victory at Steel Canyon, but now have to go on the road again and play this Eagle team right now that really is on a, big time high for this program. It kind of reminds me back, Dave, Granite Hills once beat Madison 23-14 in 1975 in the CIF playoff game that was played in Aztec Bowl. The Eagles eventually lost the Section 2A title game. Remember when there was 2A and
3A?
Yeah, and they lost the title game at San Diego Stadium. There used to be a stadium in Mission Valley, believe it or not, kids. And that game was 23-14. Or they lost that game to Oceanside anyway. So, but you know what, Dave? Considering where the Eagles are right now, just outside of where the open teams might land, the Eagles, look, they want to win that Grossmont Hills League title, but just like the other 2 Grossmont Hills League teams that are hot right now, they're all in contention kind of for that possibly that Division I title. Just depends what happens with those top teams and how the rankings shake out. Let's move on, Dave, to talk about the other hottest team, the hottest team in the East County, the El Capitan Vaqueros. Are we overplaying that, Dave, that we talk about every time El Capitan comes on our screen? We talk about them having the longest winning streak in the East County now at 5 games, and they're going to try to move to 3-0 for the first time since 2014, that magical season.
Boys and girls, when, you call an apple, and El Capitan is definitely on a huge winning streak and a huge high. You can hear it on the field, on the sideline. and I got to even stick around to and enjoy the second half. Now, Coach Berner put his first team in only one more series of that for the third quarter, obviously to preserve them for future matchups. And it's early in the season, and they're so far on top. I don't blame him. But just electrifying crowd. They did have. I want to reiterate their military salute, and they did a fantastic show for them. And Coach Berner was definitely real proud of that. What he was putting on for them. I mean, from fireworks to all the saluting all of our military servicemen and women. And I think that it's just, it's a whole different aura over there at El Capitan. And I think, thanks to Coach Berner and his staff and everybody at El Capitan for putting that on for all the men and women in the military, especially at this time of our lives. And we won't get political on that, but, we got some guys coming home, and I think that's fantastic. At any rate, I think they are the hottest team, boys and girls. So, it's on both sides of the ball, too. And it's always involving a Yokley, whether it be, Sabi, whether, he's passed it to his brother it's just phenomenal to watch, phenomenal to see, even warming up for the third quarter on the sidelines.
Well, Dave, the 42-0 shutout of Hilltop that you were at, the first shutout since that 2014 season in the Southern California Championship game of all games, and El Capitan had not had a shutout since then. So, the Islanders, they may be able to reach the end zone against that hot defense of El Capitan, but then again, maybe not, right? We saw Coronado. They managed just 7 points at home against Santana right now, who I think we'll debate this too when we get to the West Hills game, I think, but I'm considering El Capitan and Santana the front runners right now. Look, West Hills is doing great. They're on a roll too, but the ratings have them about a touchdown behind the other two teams, and I think it's fair to say because they're not a defending champion, and maybe that their strength of schedule is a notch down from El Cap and Santana, and the way that the teams have looked as good as West Hills has looked so far. But right now, when you look at Coronado played Santana, it was 10-7. Remember, Santana won the exciting game on the island. So if you kind of compare that, right, Coronado scored 7 points at home against Santana. El Capitan, they have almost the same rating. El Capitan, maybe they've looked a little bit better, especially offensively, than Santana. But Santana still comes in with great streak right now or the last couple seasons. So that's going to be a great game too. But Coronado now going into El Cap, maybe they get a couple of touchdowns, but I expect El Capitan, get a 3 touchdown victory possibly in this one. I would think that it could be more, but I just want to be, respectful of the Islanders coming in here.
Well, let's not forget too, that I want to reiterate that because I did have the interview with him on last Friday night at El Capitan, and that's defensive coordinator Sean McDade getting his first shutout also as the coordinator of the El Capitan Vaqueros.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You mentioned Yokley, Dave. He's accounted for 10 touchdowns in 2 games, right? 5 rushing, 4 passing, and that 1 receiving. So he has been awesome, and he has been elite, but he has some other guys on there too. Alex Fa'aea ran big down the middle of the field. You talk about, I wouldn't even say the backups were in. I mean, I'd give him the ball. He does get the ball quite frequently. Xavier Peace, Antoine Yokley as well. He's hooked up with his brother several times. Now, Coronado did beat Sweetwater last week. We know Sweetwater did a pretty good job in that game against Grossmont. Grossmont was expected to win. They got it done. Sweetwater maybe has underachieved a little bit now. You consider they just lost that game to Coronado. So the Islanders are allowing just 8.5 points a game themselves, but El Capitan's offense looks really, really good right now. I'm going to go El Cap 3 scores.
Yeah, easily. And like you mentioned, Xavier Peace, busting through the middle. I think with that offensive line too, I don't think that they should have any trouble against Coronado scoring. And then you got to say again, as you mentioned, Sabi definitely is very slithery when he's running the ball as well. I'm gonna take El Cap by a couple myself.
All right, a couple touchdowns, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, let's talk about those Santana Sultans, Dave, because like I said, look, I really think West Hills is in this race. Monte Vista has dropped off. They have a lot to prove at this point. West Hills has shown with the experience that they have coming back that they are joining officially, right? El Capitan and Santana, but the power ratings have them about a touchdown behind. I think you have West Hills maybe a little bit closer to El Capitan and Santana than those ratings, but I think you still might have them a notch back. Now, all they have to do is, win one of those games when the Valley League race comes to shake things up. So I want to know your take on the race, but we'll also talk about this game. Mar Vista does come in 2-0, Dave, but this isn't the same Mar Vista team that the Santana Sultans have played over the last few years. Mar Vista's victories came over Claremont and Crawford by an 87-13 margin. So their strength of schedule is, basically a nil compared to Santana. Santana respectful games, certainly, but they've had some great performances so far. Probably highlighted, you talk about the great performance that Wright had in that opener, but really Dylan Anderson, the guys have come up big in both games.
No, absolutely. And not only Dylan, but Mr. Nash also was firing on all cylinders, and that's Luke Nash with the running game as well. But you know what? When I got to see the first half against the Aztecs, and like we said last week, we weren't really sure what they had in them as far as Montgomery was concerned. And they're not the worst team, but they're not the best team either. I think, but more or less, who is winning these games? But let's give credit where credit is due, like you mentioned with Anderson, and also the offense did look better, but they are winning these games because of that defense, and they are really tough when they're stacking the box, and also I think their secondary is pretty legitimate. So with that being said, and like you said, Mar Vista, I mean, the victories over the lowly 0-2 Crawford Colts, not really that impressive. So it is definitely not the same. And I've seen some pretty incredible games in the last couple of years between the Sultans and the Mar Vista Spartans. It's been pretty. It kind of goes. They win at their place. Santana wins at their place, and they kind of split. Because they've met in the playoffs a couple of times too. So, but with this one, I'm going to definitely say Santana's going to light them up on offense as well. And I think that defense is going to be stellar. So look for the Sultans to start early, probably with the ground game. And like I said, Luke Nash is doing really well running behind that offensive line. So I think that they'll start on the ground, and they'll probably keep it there as long as it's working, and maybe open up some play action. But look for the Sultans to win this one at least by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Dave, the Mariners are definitely going to be throwing the football. They have over 550 passing yards so far this season. So I think that the Sultans, who, quite frankly, have been pretty good, very good defensively and in the secondary. You saw Braden Brashears, he had that big interception at a long return last week. And also David Friedman's been real big too. So the Sultans have been big. The Mariners could be playing right into the Sultans' hands in this one. I certainly think that it will be by I'll say 3 touchdowns as well. It should be more, but you got to give them, the Mariners probably aren't going to stop. They're going to keep passing. Mar Vista is going to come in, and it looks like they really do pass the ball. They have one guy who's a pretty big deep play threat. So Santana, they should win this one, and could be some fun, could be some scoring.
I'm looking for some turnovers, probably some defensive touchdowns for sure. So look for that defense to put some points on the board as well.
Yeah, and hopefully it's from the Sultans. I will mention, and Mar Vista did force turnovers against those two weak opponents. They forced a lot of turnovers in the backfield, but those opponents were just stuffed by the Mariners. So the Mariners look like they have it going on for the Mariners, and in years past, like you said, you've seen some good ones, but right now there does appear to be a class difference between the 2-0 teams in this one. All right, well, now I'm going to put you on the spot because I want to get your take on where the Wolfpack stand. I know we're going to get to the Grossmont Valley League a couple of weeks before we get to the Grossmont Hills League, so maybe I can pin you down a little bit on where the Wolfpack stand. This is a good test for them because even though Olympian is 0-2, West Hills does have to travel down there, and Olympian does have a freshman quarterback that has completed 57% of his passes this season. They pretty much pass at a 2-to-1 ratio down there at Olympian. And as far as West Hills is concerned, I like their secondary's chances. You figure Cohen Benavente, he had that interception return. It was the big play of the game last week, right? So I like West Hills' chances. I think speaking of playing right into someone's hands, I think Olympian plays in to West Hills' hands this week. West Hills better be on their toes, but they're expected to win.
Yeah, and I think Oberg and Max. I think Max is a beast. He just is incredible to have to cover for any secondary. Pretty big guy and very stout and very athletic. And I think that's going to be their go-to guy through the air for sure. And then let's not forget Dylan Snyder as well. And like I said,
good one, Dave.
Braden Oberg was on fire in the second half. Now let's not forget though, and Coach Casey Ash, he mentioned that to me as well after the game. They had a incredible second half, but that first half, they were down 7. They got a team that traveled from the desert. And for them to come in there like that and hang 7 and pretty much shut the pack out of the end zone in the first half. But as we saw in the interview too, Braden said, he was in his own head, and I'm sure that Coach Ash had something to say about it as well. And they looked like a completely different team for the second half, and they were making plays on offense, they were making plays on defense, as you mentioned, to the big interception. And there was also an interception to close the game out.
Dave, Max and Braden have connected 11 times. 4 of them have come for touchdowns. So they definitely have a touchdown connection there. And the big thing for Oberg so far in the 2 games, as always is the case, West Hills, Coach Ash, give them a lot of credit through all these quarterbacks that they've been through over the last few years. Very few turnovers and no interceptions so far for Oberg. So, Dave, by comparison, the Wolfpack, the Eagles, I'm talking about Olympian Eagles, right? Not to be confused. The Olympian Eagles, they had the season opening loss 14-13 to Westview, and then they lost last week 49-6 at home to San Pasqual. If you look at the ratings, the computer ratings, those teams are kind of all bunched together. The Wolfpack are slightly ahead of San Pasqual and just behind Westview in the computer rating. So that would make this game closer than maybe their records would indicate. Still, I do have concerns that Olympian doesn't match up well with West Hills. So I've got West Hills winning this one by a score, maybe a touchdown, maybe a field goal. I think they probably should feel like they might win by more with given Olympian that, they didn't look well against San Pasqual. They did not do well, but San Pasqual all of a sudden looks like they're an okay team.
Well, on the field goal, West Hills did miss an attempt in the fourth quarter. However, let's not look at that as far as points concerned. I just think that as you mentioned before, Coach Ash doesn't put the quarterbacks in a situation where they don't get if they don't have a good read, they're not going to throw the ball. And I think that's where he really presses them on that, and they, as you mentioned, they've been very impressive with that. With that being said, I'm going to say that the Wolfpack should win by a touchdown, but as you don't look at the records though, like you said, and I'm just happy that so far West Hills is going into that South Bay that's unfortunately been deeply affected by the COVID protocols. And that was a concern of Coach Ash too. Right after the game, as he said, we hope to play Olympian next week, and that was his main concern. Not so much about the matchup, but that they could play the game. And
Well,
I got the pack. So yeah, I got the pack by a touchdown.
okay, good. I do too. I'll go with that. All right, Dave. The Monte Vista Monarchs are going to be looking for their first victory of the season. They're taking on a pretty good Patrick Henry team, so I have concerns in this one. These two teams, you might remember back in the last full season, 2019, they did play kind of a wild game at Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry won 39-36. You might remember that wild game. But right now, Dave Aiden Roby's done a great job running the football, but there's, the Monte Vista just doesn't have as much going for them right now, keeping up with those other Hillsley teams. Patrick Henry is going to be, expected to win this game. They might be favored by as many as a couple of touchdowns here. Monte Vista always is going to be able to have a chance as long as they don't turn the ball over and can put together sustained scoring drives. Patrick Henry is probably known more for its offense. So Monte Vista has to be good defensively and grind out drives and stay in the game. It's a formula that can work against Patrick Henry, but right now they trail them as far as the power rating is concerned, and they're an underdog at home.
Well, look, Monte Vista, I think, as you mentioned before, Roby is, I think, unfortunately, that's the only thing that they've had going for them. As the Monarchs always do, they usually have a great runner behind the offensive line, and that has been their calling card, if you will. But this is a Monte Vista team that, we're not. We're what were we shooting last week? Was it 21 or so? Maybe no, 27 was last week. They suited 27. So they got a few more, but there's just not. I don't think there's as much talent that's typically conducive to the Monte Vista Monarchs, and I think that it's going to be. Coach said it's just going to be a tough season, is what he was saying. But when you talk to the teams in the Grossmont Valley, they do not agree with that. Several coaches have told me that Monte Vista always figures it out, and by the time league comes, they'll be firing on all cylinders. So I don't want to put Monte Vista on the shelf yet. They did have a tough 0-2 start, but I'm going to look for the upset this week and look for Roby to come up big this week and the Monte Vista Monarchs to win by 3.
Yeah, Dave, when Roby scored that touchdown last week against Rancho Buena Vista, who's now 2-0, mentioned that maybe in Rancho Buena Vista, you see their rating has gone up with that win. They're on the upswing a little bit, so maybe they're a pretty okay team. That might have been a tough opponent now, looking back on it for Monte Vista. But the Monarchs.
Let's not forget who they lost the week before.
No doubt about it. Yeah, 49-0 in that one. But so Roby scored, makes it 22-6. You see what I'm saying? They're right back in the game, and if they make a stop, then they can go back, take time off the clock, and get a score that gets them back to within one score. The Monarchs don't look to be explosive as usual, so that's how they have to do it. But we do know that they have some top defenders. I mean, Alex Sauceda, he had a sack and an interception against Rancho Buena Vista. That's a great combo to have. Sauceda, we had him on the show, and also Craig Cooper. We know that he's a top player in the Grossmont Valley League. He had a sack as well in the game last week. So right now I'm going to have to take Patrick Henry in this one. I've got Patrick Henry. I'll call it by a touchdown. Stay within a touchdown, Monte Vista.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, Monte Vista by 3.
You got Monte Vista. Okay, great. You've called the upsets, so maybe I'm going to start picking against us and let you pick upsets, and you'll be right, and we'll win. Maybe we're going to need that here. Dave, the Cougars are going to take on the Knights in a matchup of two 0-2 teams. Who saw this coming? The Cougars are going to try to avoid their first 0-3 start in 6 years. The Cougars have lost to respectable teams, right, in Eastlake and Madison, two opponents they take on very, very frequently. But like I said, just concerned last week. They had a 21-7 lead. They gave up 2 long touchdown passes. That doesn't necessarily happen to Steel Canyon teams. And the Knights, they lost their opener to Rancho Bernardo. So they've played some tough teams as well.
Yeah, and I think this is I would say this is going to be a coin toss this week, but this is one that Steel Canyon has to win. They don't want to get to 0-3, an 0-3 start, and with a couple games left going into the league. I think that this is the week that defense needs to play tough against the San Marcos team that has played some quality opponents. And let's not get, and as you mentioned before too, Eastlake and Madison are no slouch either. So I think this is anyone's game. And, Steel Canyon is typically had a pretty explosive offense also and defense as well. But again, they haven't been playing any patsies either. They set up their schedule to where they are going to win these big games.
Well, Dave, I think one of the things that you have to look for Steel Canyon is possibly somehow getting that offense on track. Now, sophomore quarterback Matthew Bartney did a great job sneaking the ball into the end zone, getting a touchdown early on a 4th and goal, and that helped get Steel Canyon to that lead. But Major Gibbons is asked to be doing a lot for Steel Canyon, and they need a little bit more offense if they're going to go on the road and beat this San Marcos team. San Marcos, it's kind of a comparable matchup between these two teams. I mean, this could be a very, very close game. Now, Steel Canyon could definitely, go up and win this game. Want to mention Logan Hicks. He was inducted into Shaq's Pigpen, joining a couple of other Steel Canyon great linemen that have been in the Pigpen. And they're going to need right now to somehow find a way to win this game and avoid going 0-3. I know that they don't want that. So, again, the Knights have passed for over 400 yards in the first 2 games. Steel Canyon got burned deep by Madison twice. Now, Madison, they're not known as necessarily an explosive team passing wise. They're more been a history of grounded out, but they made 2 big plays against Steel Canyon. Now, Steel Canyon's defense did come up big. Davis Langfeld, he had that awesome scoop and score run in the game last week, but still to lose that game in heartbreaking fashion. The Cougars did get set up. You've talked about the strongest leg in the East County. They set up for a 51-yard field goal with just a couple of seconds left, but knowing you have to hit a low trajectory, it wouldn't have mattered. Madison busts through the Steel Canyon kick blocking line, quite frankly, and got in there quite quickly as the Cougars rushed to get that 51-yarder off and didn't even get to really get the boot off. So I think you're in for another game just like that. I've got this a 1-point game, and since it looks to me like San Marcos, I don't know, the ratings might have Steel Canyon the favorite in this one. I'm going to pick San Marcos by a point.
Yeah, I'd like to see Steel Canyon, the Cougars, go up to 1-2, get their first win of the season, and get back on track. However, I'm going to have to agree with you this week. And at the same time, it could go either way. I think that because San Marcos is at home, I'm going to give them a point.
Dave, this will be the first ever meeting between the San Pasqual Golden Eagles and the Valhalla Norsemen. The Norsemen figure to have a better shot this week at victory than the game against the other Eagles last week. I want to mention, though, the Eagles did intercept the Norseman intercepted the Eagles. I got too many Eagles in this game. Valhalla did get interceptions last week from Gio Alejo and Anthony Cassiuhanan. He had a pick as well. So the Golden Eagles have had 3 interceptions themselves this season. I don't know what's going to – this one looks close on paper, Dave. San Pasquale lost to that really good Scripps Ranch team 56-20 in the season opener. So we already talked about their big victory last week. So San Pasquale actually looks pretty good here. And I don't think we can gauge Valhalla, like you said, necessarily off the 62-0 victory. They had the season opening win. So this one's kind of a confusing game to me. San Pasquale is coming in as a slight favorite.
Well, and the other one was kind of a baseball score, a high scoring baseball score with 12-6 first game prior to, and their win was over the same team that went into Santana. So at any rate, I'm going to look for. I think Valhalla should be comparable, but even at home, I think that San Pasquale is going to have just a little bit more. But they seem to be pretty similar in what they're doing. Seems to be a lot of turnovers, and I don't mean on the good side of it.
Yeah, that's what makes the game interesting because the programs have never met. San Pasquale does look to be on the upswing a little bit, and I think that I want to think that Valhalla's on the upswing. I'm willing to put that game last week behind them. And again, Valhalla did. I don't know. You were there. They had their moments early on. They had 2 picks. I don't know. I've got to take San Pasquale in this one, Dave. I said they were a slight favorite. I guess they might actually be about a touchdown favorite. So I'm going to give San Pasquale the slight edge. They're going to win this one by a field goal.
Like to see Valhalla go 2-1, but I'm going to agree with you with the Golden Eagles and go by 3 points.
All right, Dave, the El Cajon Valley Braves are going to take on Vincent Memorial. And look, both teams are 0-2. Vincent is 0-2. So the Braves are winless, but so are the Scots. Last week, Dave, the Braves scored 22 points in the fourth quarter to almost come back again in that game against Hoover. But, it was Hoover's Jaden Barnett, the former Brave, who came up big for the Cardinals in that game. Hoover had the 16-game losing streak coming in, but Barnett, the transfer, he had 2 touchdown receptions, 6 catches overall to try to, to kind of spoil it for the Braves. The Braves tried to come back. They were kind of stunned by the big lead, and they ended up short. I want to mention, Dave, year in and year out, El Cajon Valley, they do return some kickoffs, but if you just match it up statistically with every team in the county, not just the ones in their division, they have some of the best kick return men over the last couple of years. And the latest looks to be Dalen Richardson. He had an 89-yard kickoff return. I also want to mention Paris Dixon had an interception in last week's game, and senior Ahmed Sohail Amir Hussein rushed for over 100 yards. The Scots lost 28-27 to the Southwest Eagles last week in a heartbreaker, but before that, they lost to the San Diego Cavers 55-8. Can the Braves go out and win this?
I think they definitely can. In the battle of the winless, I look for. I just was really impressed with El Cajon Valley's just the potential and coming back in that fourth quarter. And Coach Osborne talked about the preparation that this ball club makes before each and every week in and week out, and you see it. He takes the program very seriously, and as do the kids on the team. I think these Braves are a lot better than they look on paper. I think they're a lot better than they were in the first week against Mission Bay. I think they were just shaking the rust off a little bit. But I'm looking for El Cajon Valley to go on the road and get their first road victory and their first victory overall this week.
Terrific.
And
Dave, go ahead.
And just to get back up there, and I'm looking for the El Cajon Valley offense to really get this team started.
Well, it looks like they're doing it, kind of on the ground right now, kind of grinding it a little bit. I think you were at that game 2 years ago. You remember these two teams played twice in the last full season back in 2019. Remember, Dave? I think you were at the first half of that game when Vincent Memorial won 35-6 at El Cajon Valley. Later they came back. Remember, the Braves were in the quarterfinals of the playoffs and lost just 23-0. I say just because that Vincent team looks like on paper, or at least even in the ratings, that Vincent team was much better than this one is right now. And it was 23-0. The Braves did. I'm not saying, they lost 23-0. Let's be frank, but it was just 23. It was 3 touchdowns, right? So, or 23-point margin. I don't know how they scored it, but I'm just telling you that game was reasonable, right? And it was a playoff game out there. So let's give the Braves a chance. Vincent Memorial is probably a 2-touchdown favorite. I'm going to call it Vincent Memorial by a touchdown. You got the Braves.
I got the Braves doing the upset with by a touchdown.
All right, I could catch you. I could get back in the picking race this week. All right, Dave, we saved one of the best for last. How about this one? You're going to have Clash Osborne and the Mission Bay Bucks taking on Jake Davila and the Christian Patriots at Valley Stadium on Saturday night if you want to see some action. Who needs the Clemson game? You can go out and see these guys.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've seen both of them this year. Unfortunately, we just talked about the Braves, but Mission Bay coming into El Cajon and, let's face it, shellacking the Braves in a shutout of too many touchdowns to even talk about. And as I mentioned before, that was against a Braves team that was pretty rusty and shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. And they're going up against a very good Christian team coming off a big win up there in the Orange County area.
Yeah, Dave, I watched the game. I was texting you about it. They were incredible. It was just an incredible game, an incredible finish for the Patriots. And you send me that picture. How about the two buddies, Davila and his pal Joey Merritt? You send me the picture of them wearing the coaches' headsets. They were ball boys, and they played together. I'm sure they've hooked up many times, but it was their first varsity touchdown. And you're texting these guys. They're driving back on the bus, coming home from San Juan Capistrano, and they're all texting you. They're probably like, "I'm texting Dave. I'm texting Dave."
Yeah, it's funny too because not only the two buddies, but then Jake Davila's father, Robert Davila, sending me the he got one from the archives and sent me a text. I believe it was Saturday early afternoon, and says, "Here, figure out who these dudes are right here." And sure enough, I figured it out right away. And a young Davila and a young Merritt. Early on, like you said, as the ball boys. So these guys have been hooking up for a long time, and I can't even imagine the excitement level that both of them had on that play. And I'm sure that Coach Mitchell drew that one up specifically for those two.
Well,
early on.
He said it, Dave. You had the quote. I mean, look, they hooked up 6 times in the game, but that was an improvised, vertical call. Take off. Everybody take off deep. We're going for the home run, and those guys hit it beautifully. It was an important touchdown because it was a tough game, man. Going up there and playing that St. Margaret's team. I mean, there was no guarantee of victory. It was going to be hard fought. Maybe we talked about it. Maybe they were even slight underdogs in that game. But they came through really with flying colors in the game with big plays all over the place.
Well, and the thing was, too, is I think that was going to be the key, too, is the defense running after the ball and really, the offense is punching them in the mouth, and I think that's exactly what they went up there and did. I think that they went up with a great game plan. on both offense and defense. Jake Davila had a great night, and then Joey on the other side of the ball as well, not just offensively but defensively, playing a phenomenal game as well.
Yeah, he had an interception. J.C. Gustin had an interception as well. Aaron Shablowski, 9 tackles, 3 for loss against this St. Margaret's team. And Davila, what can you say? 187 yards of total offense and really a great environment up there to play a football game. And must have been an awesome bus ride home. With those guys, they must have been flying. They had the end of the first quarter. The Tartans had a 90-yard punt return for a touchdown that tied the game at 7-all. But the Patriots, they got tacked with a safety. The Patriots were gambling a little bit. They probably could have ran out the clock, and they got called for an intentional grounding in the end zone. But then Christian had a drive in the second half. Davila had a 4-yard touchdown, and St. Margaret's, they came back, but Davila, the 2-yard score makes it 20-16. So Christian, look, it was tough, Dave. Just 1 of 13 on third down. So they found a way to get it done. There was nothing wrong with the performance. They won the game. They won the game with, like I said, big plays, clutch plays by those guys. But now they got to face a Mission Bay team. Christian's favored to win. Christian's expected to win. They're the better team, but Clash Osborne is one of the best quarterbacks in the county. They're going to be firing it all over the place. Like you said, you saw him against the Braves, right? You saw him, Jacob Sloan. The guy had 3 touchdowns in, it seemed like 5 minutes. I guess it was in one half, Dave.
Yeah, it was a decimation of the secondary. And that's why I think it's going to be an all-out aerial assault in this one. And I think it's going to come down to who's got the better defense and who's got the better run game on the ground.
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know. I'm really interested to see how the Patriots attack this. Attack this one. I mean, they have the tools to get in a shootout. I don't think you want to, even though you're the better team I don't think you want to get into a shootout with Clash Osborne. I think you want to try to own that ball. But when I think about what they can do, and I think about Mitchell, I think maybe I portray him as this high flying aerial attack in a way, but they do grind it out too. So
no, I think he's got the great balance of both. But if he does have to fire it down the field, he trusts the arm and the accuracy of Davila, and you got a lot of speed on that offense too. You got on the receivers are fast. You were saying about JC. I mean, he can take off like a lightning bolt, and no one will catch him. You get him the ball, I would say it's about a 90% chance it's going to go in for 6.
Well,
so I think it's going to, like I said, I think it's going to come down to possible turnovers and who can stop who the most, and that's who's going to win the ball game. With that being said, for 2 reasons. Number one, they're playing at their home at Valley Stadium, and I'm also going to say after that big win that I think Christian gets it done, and I think they do get it done defensively. However, I'm going to say that this one, it could be a lot of points scored, but I'm going to look for Christian to win by a touchdown.
Okay, I've got Christian winning by more than that. I've got him win maybe by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Remember, Dave, they just played back in the spring at Mission Bay, and Christian won 52-31. So I think Christian can definitely win this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns. That's the thing. I don't want to say with old Christian. I don't want to say old and new. I mean, Christian did end up a lot of times when they get ahead, the other teams, and Christian, sometimes the depth isn't there, or they want to, everyone will play, things like that, and other teams would get some scores, and that's why Christian ended up in some higher scoring games. And Mission Bay's got enough offense, I'm sure, to put some points up on this one. Dave, but I've got the Patriots by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So, all right, Dave, week 3. You got anything else before we get out of here? Great week. I'm sorry about the other games getting canceled, but boy, we're looking good, aren't we? You look at those 3 teams in the top 10. You look at the El Capitan Vaqueros, going to get you to commit to me on the Grossmont races hopefully next week. And don't forget about those Christian Patriots moving on the outside of the rankings. I'm sure they're going to wake up the county here very, very soon if they haven't already.
I agree wholeheartedly, and that is going to be the game of the week on this Saturday. Let's make sure everybody knows that, not on Friday, but at Valley Stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, I think if you look at our schedule, if you talk about all the games in the East County this week, even though it's expected to be not one-sided, but Christian winning, I just think the marquee matchup with Orsborn and Davila and the possibility of a thrilling game as the only game in the East County, at least, I think, might be the only game in the county on Saturday night. Might be something for all football fans to attend and see an exciting game. All right, Dave. Great job for Dave Dickens. I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.